Hi there, this is Ruth Royal from Youth Pledge for Employers, and I'm really delighted today to be talking to Mary Doggett, who is owner at ETT Photography. Hello, Mary.
Hello, really great to be here.
Thank you so much. Now, I know you've got a bit of a presentation to share with us, so I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. So, yes, I just think it sort of brings it a little bit to life, what I do. Obviously, as a photographer, it's a very visual profession. So I will just quickly run through. The way I got into photography is actually my mum taught me how to use a camera. She taught me all the manual settings on an old SLR film camera of the day, and that's her actually in the middle. And she was actually at Bernard Matthew's house when he had all these chickens running around, so that was good.
Oh, wow, Mary, we can only see the first slide at the moment, so I don't know if the next ones have moved on yet.
Okay, hang on then. All right, so let's just go down here. Apologies. There we go. Is that better?
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank
Yeah.
you. We can always do a bit of editing there, but that's fantastic.
Oh, brilliant. So the type of photography I love to do, just as a hobby, is street photography. And I love taking pictures of people at festivals. And we obviously have fantastic things going on in Norwich, but this is from all over. I also used to take a lot of photographs on holiday. So, and I had no problems at all actually approaching people and asking for a photo. Sometimes people have got a look or a face or something that just really, don't know, inspires me. And it's also a great excuse to speak to people. How I got into photography, first of all, is really, or the commercial side of it, was selling some images via Shutterstock, which is always a great way to start. It tests how good you are, because if people buy your photographs, then that means something's working right. So I continue to do that, and that's a nice way to earn a bit of extra money. I do all sorts. I do weddings, portraits, commercial stuff, event photography, and I work for some charities as well. I'll just flick you through some of the wedding images that I have. So there's one at the castle. Obviously, everyone in masks there because they were during the time of COVID. Castle is a very beautiful backdrop for weddings. Some nice outdoor ones as well, COVID related, some at the beach, some at local venues across Norfolk. And actually the great thing about doing weddings is that you're there on a really happy day. Most people are usually in a really good frame of mind and a good mood. And your job is really just to make sure that you capture the essence of the day and the atmosphere of the day, and make sure you get plenty of pictures of people enjoying themselves, because it's not necessarily the absolute it's not a beauty or a fashion shoot. It is, you're there to actually make sure you're a record of the day for that couple. So weddings are great fun. I'll just skip through the rest of these. Done some quite unusual ones as well, which is always quite good. And what I also do as well is do family portraits. So can either do them either in a location. So sometimes I'll speak to a client beforehand and they'll say, oh, we've got a holiday cottage, we'd love you to come to our holiday cottage. So I took on out there and take photographs of the family there. Or as in the photograph on the right, I have a studio at home. So I have a room which is sort of 9 meters by 6 meters. I do a lot of family groups in that environment, which is really good. The difference with the studio is that you really control the lighting, and it makes things a lot easier for a photographer if you can control all that lighting. You don't have to rely on brilliant weather or whatever's going to happen or what happens at the venue. What I like to do with portraits as well is make sure that you just get a sense of the relationship between family members. So big dad on the left here and tiny little daughter. I think that one's quite a cute one. And also the one on the right doesn't necessarily have to include faces. So always sort of think of what you're trying to convey in an image when you when you take a photograph and practice that, you can practice that on with your own family, and get a sense of an atmosphere or a relationship between two people. For businesses, the key is to make sure that you're putting your business, showing that business in a really good light. And obviously the main thing is that they have high quality images, because that then reflects on their business. And if you buy from people who look good, their website looks good, they've got some fantastic images on the website, you're more likely to be filled with a bit of a sense of confidence. So that's essentially what I aim to do for my business customers. So I do some fashion work with some different fashion suppliers, jewelry makers. What else we got here? I worked for Tesco's fairly recently, Jewson's. I do some sort of what they call lifestyle. Lifestyle's a bit strange because it's kind of one of those things that everyone's got a lifestyle, but what do you mean by it? And I think sometimes it means, what do you aspire to? Well, obviously in this picture of the lady drinking, she's really enjoying that drink, and she was sitting back, laid back, and with her friends there, enjoying a nice day out, and actually the coffee is part of it. So that's what I'm trying to convey in those images. This was a lovely shoot up at a hotel in Norwich, the Maid's Head Hotel. I was drooling all over the food, and it was absolutely delicious to shoot, but the food got sort of whipped away from in front of me and taken across to the tasters. So all the staff in there get a chance to taste what's on the on their sort of quality menus, so that they know what they're selling to their staff. But beautiful. So all sorts of different types of businesses. This chap had gloves that he used for wheelchair users, and they're very hard wearing gloves, and he developed them and handmade them himself. So interesting businesses as well. Lots more different types of shots. Sometimes when you've got products, it's really hard to make them come alive. So use whatever you have to hand, or you display them in a certain way. I call on models very often to help me with things, because looking at a person enjoying life with a product is far better than just a picture, usually, of the product itself. So yeah, take pictures of people for their websites and also for social media. So everyone who's got business, it's recommended to have a photograph on LinkedIn, so it can help businesses with that as well. A few more bits and pieces. I worked for Norwich Bid, and that means sort of quite a few days wandering around Norwich, taking pictures of the surrounds, but what a beautiful city we live in. So that's no hardship whatsoever. It doesn't feel like work at all. So part of my business, I think it's really important to encourage people to actually use photography as well, just in their daily lives. Photography is great for your own mental health. It's enables you to get out and enjoy life. You don't have to be with a group. You can toddle around on your own if you want to, just to sort of get some fresh air. It's good for you, and it's creative as well. So if you think you want to maybe combine a bit of creativity with sort of more formal studies, that's absolutely great. I think getting a balance like that is superb. And I also work for a charity which is Remember My Baby, and they offer portraits for families who've sadly had bereavement in the family, where they've had a baby stillborn or something, and that's a great comfort to them. So I absolutely love that work as well. Yeah, so that's a quick sort of overview of me, really. I'll close that down, and yeah, make sure I'm done, really.
Oh, Mary, that was fantastic. And that was so interesting to see, like, all the different sorts of photography that exist, as it were. That I mean, I really appreciated you explaining sort of the different things that you might have to think about. I was thinking, you gave some really good advice there about for people looking to get into photography, like selling images via Shutterstock, to get an idea of how good you are, like practicing with your family and trying to think about how you could how an image might convey a relationship or an atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
With that in mind, what other sorts of things might you suggest to people that were looking at setting out on their career journey?
Okay. I'm a huge advocate for just setting off and going out to speak to people, but just offering them something that you can help with. So, for example, the Norwich bid for several years, several years when I started, I just said, look, taking some photographs of Norwich. Don't know whether you'd be interested in them, whether you use them, but I had time. It was part of lockdown, and they looked at those images and they took them. They said thank you very much, and then a year later, I had a phone call from them, and I've ended up working for them. So my advice is get out and meet as many people as you can. Offer your services and just say, no, it's fine. I don't want any money. I will, I just want to, I've seen this, it inspires me, it's something I'd like to photograph. Are you okay if I send you photographs? And you never, ever, ever know what will come of it. In fact, I've had a few occasions like that, and also think to yourself, what sort of photography do you really love to do? If it's, say you love like product photography and you really find interesting ways to photograph products, then concentrate on that area first of all. Get connections with businesses that really need your services. And as I say, just offer them for free. Just introduce yourself, be enthusiastic, and show your skills off to the best you possibly can. Yeah.
That's really helpful. So then once you've got a few perhaps sort of connections and you've got your images out there through people that have done it for free, then I guess you can concentrate on marketing your own services.
Yeah.
And that sort of brings me sort of to another bit that I'm interested in, because it strikes me that actually in a way there's almost like 3 stages sometimes to what you do when it's more structured. That there's almost like the setting up and there's like the planning, like to get the venues, to organise the people, and then there's the actual doing the shoot itself, where you probably got to prep the scene and get everything right, and then probably afterwards as well, in terms of like sort of manipulating pictures. So I wondered if we could almost sort of, if that's, I know it's very high level, but if we could almost talk through like the different skills that you're using at each of those phases. Say with the setting up and the planning phase, what sort of things do you do in that phase, and sort of what sort of skills do you need for that bit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, communication is really key. Whilst you may be creative, at the end of the day, you're still dealing with businesses, customers, and to be able to communicate your ideas clearly is very important. You almost have to be a bit of a project manager for certain things, especially if it means pulling different suppliers together every day and setting an expectation of what you need from them. For example, if I do a bridal shoot, I'll do that potentially with models, different wedding services, the venue owner, with dresses, and all those other things have to kind of arrive on the day, and it's a bit logistical. So that's key. You have to be really good, and I think both verbally and written, right? So that's something as well that you develop as part of your job. You find ways that work best for you, and that give you the results that you want. So it hasn't been plain sailing for me. I mean, I've struggled first of all, but also set expectations. So the shoot, obviously, timings of the shoot, when you expect to be there, and most importantly is almost like the aftercare service, because everyone focuses on, it's wonderful images, but don't forget that these customers will come back to you if you have really, really good after service. So in other words, set expectations and tell them how long it's going to take before you supply the images to them. the worst thing in the world is just hearing nothing. Even if you're beavering away, and you've just got like a couple of days left for a wedding, if that couple don't know that you're very close to actually supplying them, they might just be getting to the point where, oh. But if you said, you know, oh, it's going to take me 2 weeks to get the images back to you, if you're going to be a little bit sort of late on that, just warn them you're going to be late. Don't wait till you're actually late.
Oh, that's really helpful. So I think that's really useful advice. So you've got to be able to communicate really well. You've got to be able to almost like see what it is that you're going to do, and then think about who you might need to get those bits there to make that scene, make that image. You've then got to contact other people, organise for them to be there, book wherever it is the space if you need to. So you've really got to plan ahead, and you've also got to set the expectations for the person that you're taking the pictures for.
Exactly.
That's really helpful. So when you're actually then doing the shoot itself, what sort of skills are you thinking about then? What sort of things are you doing?
I would say the number one skill is to, whatever piece of equipment you're using, know it 100% inside out, almost to the point that you don't need to look at your camera to change the settings. In fact, one of the things that's a really good test is to actually pick up a camera and change the settings almost with your eyes closed. Okay, if you can do that, you're well on the way to be able to multitask. By that, I mean being able to talk to your customer. If it's somebody who's nervous, the last thing somebody needs is having somebody point a camera at them and suddenly stop. The thing to do is always chat to people, especially people who are nervous, and the only way you can do that is by being confident using your equipment. So almost the taking the pictures is secondary to you know, the chat and the interaction you're having with them. It's funny, when I do sort of group sessions and we have models, people are always very chatty until they lift the camera up to their face to look through the viewfinder, and then suddenly the communication just stops. Whereas you've got to sort of carry it on, and almost, like I say, the photography itself is pretty much secondary. So
that's really good as well. I think that tip about knowing your equipment backwards and practice almost like trying to change the settings with your eyes closed, I think that's really useful, and as well as keeping that conversation flowing, because I guess that keeps the atmosphere going in terms of the pictures that you're getting. And then what about that sort of, so you finished, the shoot's all done, everything's taken down, the dresses are back to people, you're back home. What sort of skills and what sort of things are you doing then in that phase?
I think you almost have to turn into a bit of a IT geek. You have to make sure you back up all your images, okay, and be really fastidious with that, because the worst reputation I think you could have is to lose those images. So I immediately get home. I've got, if I do a wedding, there's 2 sets of images. This is my camera photographs and 2 different cards. Both of those cards immediately get backed up full machine, server at home, and then I can kind of breathe. If before then, and then what I can do is literally just work on the editing, and I do that. I use some software. It's usually Lightroom, which is similar to Photoshop, but Lightroom is effectively a great tool for managing photographs and managing your entire library of photographs. It's excellent for. And Photoshop I have to use occasionally when I want to manipulate images, such as I do cutouts of like people or products against a background. All those sort of extra bits and pieces I go into Photoshop for. So they're the 2 main pieces of software. But there are other bits that are useful, particularly for planning. There's a app called Photo Pills, which helps you plan the sun direction, what time the sun comes down, and where it will be against, you know, a particular location, which is really, really useful. But yeah, that editing side takes far more time than it does on the shoot. So I would say that for every hour I shoot, I generally spend between 2 to 3 hours editing, and that's not because the photographs aren't necessarily what I want them to be, although obviously what you're doing is you're looking through all of them and getting the ones that you think are the absolute best quality. Very often, sometimes if you're at a wedding, for example, the light changes throughout the day, and whilst you try and keep up with your camera, make sure you change your settings for that. Sometimes you do have to edit to actually maximize the color tones in the photograph. So that's what a lot of the editing is really all about.
That is so interesting, Mary. So your advice at that stage is be fastidious, back everything up as soon as you possibly can. Get yourself some great tools that work for you in terms of not only editing, but also managing your photo library, and also perhaps some other tools that help you plan. Was that photo pills, did you say? Like, you know, in terms of like the sun. And to just be really conscious of and to plan for the fact that actually it's going to take more time to edit than it is to do the shoot. So for 1 hour photographing, maybe 2 to 3 hours editing. That is so useful.
Little bit of a misnomer that people do think you're out and about the whole time. Yes, every week is different and every shoot is different, and that's great fun, but ultimately there's a lot of time still spent in front of a PC, and I think you have to enjoy both sides, otherwise you wouldn't put up with being a photographer.
If you were, and probably my last question really is, if you were going to go back and give some advice to young Mary, starting off in her career journey, age 16, 18, whatever that was for you, Mary, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say just learn the basics of photography, and when I say that, learn what it means to understand light and how you can manipulate it and change it. So there's some really key things. It doesn't matter how good your equipment is, if you don't understand how to change your shutter speed against the size of your aperture and what effect that has, you will always struggle. So get those fundamentals under your belt as soon as you can. Use Google something called the exposure triangle. Once you understand the exposure triangle, and that's the relationship between shutter speed and your aperture and the sensitivity of your camera to light, which is ISO, understand those three things, and literally the world's your oyster in terms of all the creative things that you can do. And obviously practice using manual mode, because with manual mode you're making all the decisions on what the camera can do, and the only way you'll be able to get used to doing that is if you understand it. So it's not a very exciting answer, I'm afraid, that one, but
no, that was brilliant. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time today. That's absolutely brilliant to talk to you, and really helps to kind of demystify what it is that photographers do and actually how you go about working. Thank you again for your time, Mary.
You're very welcome. That's a lot of fun. Thanks ever so much for listening.
Thank you.